What has happened to Tyre Nichols is not okay. What happened to Tyre Nichols should not have happened. I have my thoughts on this situation, and my commentary and assessment on this matter is not going to be popular. In fact, it might even make you upset. A young black man has lost his life, and five now former police officers have effectively lost theirs because they're going to jail. So, what do we make of all of this? We're going to talk about it and more. And we're going to talk about some inconvenient truths that the Black community is going to have to grapple with. All of this and more on the Standard of Truth podcast. Welcome to the Standard of Truth podcast. I am your host, April Chapman. I am in a more somber mood because the story that I'm going to be covering today is actually very serious, it's very grievous, and it is very sad. Today, we're going to be talking about the death of Tyre Nichols, a 29-year-old Black man, resident of Memphis, Tennessee, who lost his life by being brutally beaten to death by five Memphis police officers. Now, everyone else on the interwebs, including other Black people who look like me, you've got some segments of the community that are saying that, that this is racism, systemic racism. And for me, when I first heard that take, I was like, okay, I'm struggling to understand how this is racism when the people who killed him were Black. So you have five Black officers and they brutally beat a Black man. And this is somehow, they're going to spin this as systemic racism. You have white liberals actually perpetuating this falsehood too, because they're saying, well, what you don't understand is that it's just systemic. It's so deeply ingrained into the fiber of this country that these Black officers, because they are employed by this white supremacist uh, uh, police system, it's just that their mere employment by this government agency makes them complicit in racism. I actually saw a Black woman, spewing such retarded rhetoric, and it made absolutely no sense. So, the first thing I want to do for the Bible believing Christian is to help you think biblically about this. One, don't allow the mainstream media, the YouTube pundits, and the community activists to manipulate you and emotionally bait you in to this discussion. We're going to think thoughtfully and logically about this, and we can mourn the nature of what has happened because a senseless life was taken by violence perpetuated upon him by people who look like him. So we can have the conversation of the fact that Memphis is one of the most dangerous cities in this country, right? We can have that discussion. We need to have the discussion why five Black police officers felt it was necessary to use the excessive force that they use at a routine traffic stop. Now, I get it. I am a law and order kind of person because I am a Christian. I believe believers, we submit ourselves under authority. We submit ourselves to the government authorities. And at a routine traffic stop, I have never at any time ever been fearful of my life. Why? Because I'm like, okay, if I'm pulled over, whether it's warranted or not, I'm going to comply with the request of the officer. If he asks for my driver's license, here you go, officer, sir. Thank you very much. You need my registration. You need a copy of my insurance. Well, that's digital now. But yeah, we're going to comply with basic requests. We're not going to have a little attitude. We're not going to pull rank and say, what's your name? Give me your badge. We're not doing any of that. Now, we've seen a lot of that, and I'm going to actually provide some commentary on what I think is behind that as well. But we can have that conversation. That's a very important conversation. I believe we also need to have a conversation about responsible policing, right? But the conversation that I want to have is the conversation that no one in the Black community really wants to have. And it's a conversation on both sides of this issue. It's a conversation concerning the family dynamic and structure of the victim of this crime, Tyre Nichols. And it's a conversation about the family dynamic and structure of these five police officers that felt that they needed to use excessive force in order to restrain someone in this way who was resisting arrest. What is that conversation I want to have? Why is it that in the Black community, there is a high instance of rebelling against authority? Is there something going on in our DNA that we're just not built to submit to authority? That we're just not built to comply and obey when people give basic commands? No, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that there is something going on with us genetically that presupposes us to violence or that presupposes and places us to where we are triggered when we are asked to comply. I don't believe that's the issue at all. But what I would like to do is examine what's been going on in the Black community for the past 60 years. What is the underlying problem that we've seen in our community that everybody knows it's a problem, but everyone wants to walk around this elephant in the room as if it doesn't matter? And if we're not seeing the fruits of that today in 2023, what is that? When you have an entire generation of young boys that turn into men that were raised without fathers, actively in the home, married to their mothers, there is an element of rage, there is an element of emotionalism that you do not see in other communities and in other Black communities where there is instances of intact families where the father is the head of the home, the mother is lovingly submitting to that husband, and the children understand authority because this is how they were raised. They understand that as a member of this family, you don't just get to do what you want to do because you feel. I find that young boys, young Black boys, who grow up in homes where there is an intact family, where there is a strong yet loving father, and there is a submissive and cooperative, loving and nurturing mother, these Black boys don't walk around with rage. They're not perpetually angry. They're not holding hatred in their hearts. And then when they're told to comply, whether it's from a teacher or from a coach or from a youth pastor or from someone else, their first knee jerk reaction isn't to buck against the authority. Nope, that's not what you see. These young men, it is natural for them to fall in line and to submit to authority. Why? Because they're used to it. When the father in the home speaks and lays down rules, standards, and requirements, they understand order and how that works. And they understand that failure to comply here is going to yield me consequences and repercussions that I may or may not be ready to handle. So it is best for me and it is wise for me to comply. But what do we see on the flip side? What do we see when there are households that are run not just by single Black women, but generations of matriarchy, where it's me, ma, then it's my mama, then it's my big sister, and it's all my aunties. What do we see categorically? And don't come for me saying, well, I was raised by a single mother and I'm not like that. I'm not talking about you per se. You're not the exception. You might be the exception to the rule. But what we're seeing out here in the streets of America, in our cities, are not exceptions to the rule. These are the standards. They're not the outliers. This is the vast majority of the whole. When you look at a microscopic section of our community, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing, and it's not just the young Black boys, because this rage and rebellion and adversarial attitude towards authority is seen in our young women too. Exhibit A, Shakari Richardson. She don't know how to act no matter where she goes. She can't be held accountable for her actions. She pops off at the mouth at a simple request to, ma'am, can you put your phone away? You jumping in my video. So you in my video. Shakari Richardson. And this is no shade to her, right? She couldn't control the hand she was dealt, but she wasn't raised with a father. And from my research, she wasn't raised with her biological mother either. She was raised by grandma. Now, I don't know where grandpa was in all of this, but I don't think he was in the picture either. But the point I am making is the conversation that needs to be had that no one wants to talk about is you've got Generation X, which is my generation, who abandoned the heteronormative nuclear family structure in lieu of I can do bad all by myself. I can go to college, get my degree, get my master's degree, have these kids, raise them because I'm strong, I'm independent, I don't need nobody. And then the fruit of our womb, these are our offspring. A 29-year-old, 32-year-olds, 23-year-olds, those children are old enough to be my sons, those police officers, except for the 32-year-old. Well, depending on how we do the math, then I won't tell my age. But those police officers and Tyree, those are old. They're old enough to be my children, or the those in my generation, Generation X. We're seeing the fruits of that all over this country in every major city. They have no concept of what it means to submit to male authority. So when they leave the home and they get out into the real world and they actually have to submit to someone's authority, they don't know how to respond to that in a healthy way. All they know how to do, they have rage and aggression. There's a lot of anger because daddy wasn't there. And there may be legitimate reason why daddy wasn't there. There may not be legitimate reason why daddy wasn't there. But here's what we know. Daddy wasn't there. And he wasn't in a one flesh union with their mama. Mama did the best that she could raising these young men. And these young men are weak. They are hyper emotional. It doesn't take much to set them off. So I've seen the press release of Tyre Nichols. You know, it's sad what happened to that young man. But during that press release, you know what I saw? All I saw was his mama mourning. Where's his daddy? I want to talk about where is his daddy. And I don't want to talk about where is his daddy, like, oh, he got a deadbeat daddy, his daddy ain't in the picture. We can have that conversation because that is real. That is very real. But I want to talk about our women who either refuse or make it so difficult to cooperate with a man that we don't pair bond, meaning we're not getting married and we're not having children doing it the right way. We're not marrying before we carry. And then we have these babies. We have this offspring that is now growing up bitter, angry, rebellious, full of rage, hyper emotional, because all they know is living in a house with a bunch of women. Between their aunties and their mima and grandmama and great grandmama. How is a man supposed to know how to temper his emotions, his God given emotions? Emotions are not evil. But when a man is led by his emotions and all he knows is how to react in his feelings, it's a ticking time bomb. Do you not think that that emotion, when it is confronted in a hostile situation, Then now you got fire fighting fire. You have a 23-year-old cop. All of these cops are between the ages of 23 and 32. These are young black men. And I'm not trying to not hold these cops responsible. These are grown men. They're young, but they are adult males. But you know what else I noticed? Who's the police chief of Memphis, Tennessee? It's a black woman. How is a woman going to be placed in a position of authority in one of the most hostile cities in this country in an effort to bring law and order? Are we going to talk about how things are just out of order in our community and we're so progressive, we're so advanced and modern, we're so lockstep with the feminist agenda that we can't even see that even down to the political decisions that we make are detrimental to our communities. I have smoked for both sides. I have smoked for the fact that in our communities and in our neighborhoods, why do we have all of this matriarchal female leadership? As if that is good for us. This female matriarchal leadership is not good for us because the ones out here acting a fool and terrorizing our own communities look just like us and were raised by us. Us meaning the gynocracy, the matriarchy. A whole generation of young people raised by nothing but these headstrong, independent women who abandon and they don't submit to male leadership or authority of any kind themselves. How do I know this? Because I got to deal with them every day. It is not easy dealing with the public, let alone today's modern black woman. I have to deal with her all the time. Just walking around with an attitude for no reason. Good morning. How are you? Good morning. Did, did we sleep together last night? Did I do something to you? I just said good morning. This matter of fact, always on edge, always defensive. Everything is taken personal. When are we gonna look at our community and say we did this? We created this monstrosity of rage and hyper emotionalism and the idea that when things don't go my way, I can just react. I can just run. I don't have to submit myself to rules or standards or requirements. When are we going to have that conversation? Yes, it is unfortunate that Tyre Nichols lost his life. There is no excuse that a routine traffic stop results in being brutally beaten to death. But there's also no excuse that at a routine traffic stop, that simple instructions cannot be submitted to and complied with. There's no excuse for that. But see, in my home, I have two boys. All they know is male headship and leadership. When their father tells them something to do, he does not care how they feel about it. They just comply and they do it because that is their father. And if he has a standard and a requirement and he has demanded something from them, they know, oh, I am to submit. And when the father leaves the house and leaves instructions with their mama and says, I need you to make sure that the boys do this, that, and the third. I don't in turn buck against, but why they got to do it like this? What's they got to do that for? Well, I think they should. No, it's just like, okay, what you need? Okay, I'll make sure they get it done. And I convey the message and say, your father has said he needs you to do this, that, and the third. Does everybody understand? And they say yes. And if they don't understand, they ask clarifying questions. Well, does he want the leaves in the front or in the back? Does he want to use the smaller blower or the bigger blower? Because sometimes he wants the big blower. And I'm like, oh, okay, good question. Let me get clarity to find out exactly what your father wants done. I communicate that with them. There's no fight. There's no aggression. There's no arguments. It's just peace because Men, when they're in their rightful role and in their rightful place, bring order out of chaos. Our cities are in chaos. Our communities are in chaos because they're reflective of the chaos in our homes. Homes that have heteronuclear families with fathers and mothers in loving, submissive, and serving servanthood relationships with each other, they're not chaotic. Now, my house might be loud and it might be boisterous, right? Because we're just in an energetic bunch. But chaos, it is not. Because when my husband comes home and there is chaos, he's like, oh, no, no, no. No, no, no. We're not doing this. He brings order and peace and structure to the home. That's what men do. So don't be surprised that our communities are chaotic and unstructured because they're reflective of what's going on in our homes. And Black women, the ones that are listening to me under the sound of my voice, we need to own this. We raise these young men that are out here on these streets that are in disproportionate numbers have no experience of submitting to authority. Why? You don't submit to authority. Someone tells you to do something, you gotta just pop off at the mouth. Well, why I gotta do it like this? Well, first of all, what's your name? Who are you? Well, you don't. I'm grown. You don't talk to me like that. We see it all the time. You can't hold us accountable. You can't tell us anything. And then we wonder why the young men that we are leashing out to the world, the ones who are taking jobs as they're supposed to protect and serve, their first knee-jerk reaction is, I gotta fight. Where's all this aggression coming from? Now, I get it. Memphis is a hostile city. And from my understanding, the unit where these police officers were specifically a part of, they had to be rough. They had to be tough. Why? Because out on those streets every day, I'm not a police officer. I've never been a police officer, but my mother retired from the Bronx DA's office. So I know a little bit. I come from a law enforcement family. My father was in law enforcement. So I know a little bit about the judicial system and the court system and policing in general. When the streets are rough, it makes you rough. And sometimes, yes, you might be a little bit more aggressive than most. But what I also find is that in our community, we don't have a concept of healthy conflict resolution to where we can de escalate a situation before it goes left. Why? Because in our homes, all we know is 0 and 10. Why? Because women who are uncovered by the headship of a man are chaotic. There's no structure. It's all over the place. And I get it, ladies. You like, listen, I was just doing the best that I could. I had to work, and then from work, I had to go pick up the baby here, and then I had to do this and I had to do that. And there's no structure. So are we surprised that our police departments lack proper structure and order when the mayor, for whatever reason, thought it was a good idea to put a Black woman in charge? See, this is where equity and inclusion and just feminism, it all goes left because we're not making decisions based off of logic and reason and common sense. It's for the virtue of it all. We need the first Black police chief, or we need the first Black this. We got a vice president who's unqualified, and she got there. Why? Because she is pseudo Black and she's a woman. And then we have to deal with the results of her incompetency with a wide open border with no solutions in sight. Chaos. Chaos. City of Atlanta, our last former mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Black woman. Q, city in chaos. We got tent cities everywhere, graffiti everywhere. The last time a riot broke out, we got the Black woman on the scene trying to bring calm and order as if Violent men with pent up aggression who have abandonment and daddy issues are going to respond to a black woman telling them that they need to go home. They're already used to, they don't submit to women. They were raised by these women. They've never listened to them. So now that's the answer. That's the solution. So yes, this is my commentary on the Tyre Nichols situation. I know you wasn't expecting this. You wanted me, I stand with Tyre and police are bad. No, I'm a Christian. I'm going to think biblically and logically about this, but I'm also looking at the underlying problems that contribute to situations like this. Our homes are out of order, which causes our schools to be out of order. Children don't submit to authority because their homes are chaotic because they don't have any model for authority in the home. Mama say do something, I ain't gotta do what she gotta say. Mama gotta say it 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 times. When daddies are in the home, daddy speaks one time. It's something about the bass in the voice of a man, a a black man at that. I don't want to excuse my white brother because y'all know I got love for y'all too. But it probably works the same way in your community. But I know for me, being raised by a single mom, having had no experience of cooperating with a man, I never heard bass in the voice in my house. I have brothers, but by the time I was old enough, they were out the house. I have no concept of a man coming in and setting things in order, not by being aggressive and yelling, but just his mere presence commanding respect. I had to learn this. So, of course, I meet my husband, and he had to lovingly explain to me order and structure and bring peace out of chaos. But he met me, my life was chaotic. Just single woman out here trying to do the best that I can. I was doing okay. I was a small business owner. I had bought my house. I didn't know what I was doing. House was just, he came in like, oh, why is the thermostat hanging off the wall? Why is the smoke detector chirping like that? He had to come in and bring order to that house. I didn't even have like a outside trash bin where I had just closed and it had been a couple of months, right? Right. There were a lot of things that needed repair. Well, one of those main things is that I did not have um the proper trash bin that I was supposed to have. And he was just like, "Where's your trash bin?" I was like, I mean, I had a Camry. I was like, well, if I buy it, how am I gonna get it in the house? And he was like, okay, Lord, let me help this woman. And he came in and he did what needed to be done. He brought structure into the home. He redid my kitchen. He did things that when men come in, they just make things right. They help alleviate worry and fear and concern, and they bring peace, structure, and order. This is what's missing in our cities because it's missing in our home, ladies. We need to own this and say, we did this. Our failure to want to cooperate with the men we made children with, and then due to whatever circumstance, we had to raise these children on our own. And we did the best that we could, but it's not looking good out here. You know, I don't think it was a good idea for us to lay down and have, 3, 4 kids out of wedlock with 2, 3 different men. That's chaotic. Our schools, our schools are not well. Our students, they don't want to submit to authority. The teachers say, sit down. Even the little girls are popping back at them. I ain't got to sit down. You don't tell me what to do. You got kindergartners and third graders rising up wanting to fight a teacher because our homes are chaotic. What is the solution, God's people? The solution is in the Black community. Granted, this need to happen in communities universally, but in the Black community, This single mama rate, we got to get this down. We need to figure it out. Go get some therapy. Go get saved. Figure out something, but go and pair bond with a good man, because there are good men out here, but our priorities are all out of order. If he don't make you tingle, then he too plain, he too no, we're in a crisis because Memphis and all these other major cities might very well be in ruins and set ablaze by its own residents, which help me understand how blowing off steam in that way makes any sense. I'm not saying you can't peacefully protest and be angry and demand accountability from the Memphis Police Department, but they've already lost their jobs and they've already been charged with second-degree murder. So listening to the Ben Crumps of the world, the ambulance chaser, the one who's just grifting because he needs money, they need this narrative. They need to stoke the flames of racism when this doesn't even fit the narrative. But just like, because our homes are ruled by emotion, because there's no man to balance it out with logic and reason, the media is doing the same thing to you. You got Don Lemonhead out here, and then the police chief, and it's just a mess. So I know this isn't what you were expecting to hear, but that doesn't make it any less true. We need to have a discussion about why our community so chaotic. It's because our homes are chaotic. And this generation that we see out here now, we raised them. Eat it, ladies. We raised them. And men, some of y'all abandoned your home. So we need to take ownership of that. Get back the basics. Having scattered babies all over the country or the city or the county, that's not it. Because now, this aggression, we are killing each other because we don't understand healthy authority, healthy submission. All we know is chaos and conflict. And God never designed it to be that way. Christ ordered his church the same way he ordered the family. And if we can't figure out those basic truths, there is no hope. There is no hope for us.